My name's Deanna. I'm standing in for Angie at the moment because she's had the audacity to take vacation today, and she's in Europe. So she'll be back next week. I want to say thanks, first of all, to Stephen Forth, who's our speaker this evening on choosing a business model. And Stephen has a wealth of experience in the startup and venture space, and he's currently with Rocket Builders and has a new venture called TeamFit, which I'm sure he'll tell you a little bit about. Washrooms outside, women's is on the left to the stairs, and the men's is on the right. As usual, if you could turn your cell phones to silent or vibrate, that'd be great. We are webcasting tonight, so just a couple of things to make you aware of. If you're going to ask a question, just please put your hand up. Everybody remember elementary school. Put your hand up, and Lucas will bring the mic over to you, and that way that whoever's watching the webcast can also hear your question. The next seminar is the business case, What Angels Really Want, with Mike Volker. So that'll be next week, same time, Wednesday, in the same space. What else do I need to tell you? Sorry, I have a list. First cell phone fail, that guy. The slides are online. They're on the New Ventures website under resources, and Lucas will email a link out to everybody who's on the Eventbrite invitation as well. So just a quick thank you and some recognition for our sponsors. So BCIC, the BC Innovation Council, is our lead partner and has been for many years now. They give us lots of money, so we like them a lot. I am here, I actually work with Van City, so we're also a sponsor. EY, the BC Bioenergy Network, Fasken Martineau, and the Vancouver Economic Commission. So a lot of those sponsors also provide in-kind services and prize money for our top 10. Some of our silver sponsors are BCTIA and SFU, UVic and Sauder, the various schools of business. And some of our bronze sponsors include Ace Tech, the Vancouver Enterprise Forum, WebNames, Launch Academy, Foresight Clean Tech Accelerator, there's a lot of these, Wavefront, Plug and Play, and BCTIA Center for Growth, which again offer great resources to the startup world. So without any further ado, Stephen will tell you about what did you say? What is a business model and why you need one? It's a good idea.
Okay, thank you very much. There, that's better. Okay, good evening, everyone. So, Stephen Forth. I've been doing startups since I was, I think, 24, when I realized that nobody really wanted me as an employee. So I started my first company in Tokyo before many of you were born, I think. When did I started it's easy to remember because I was a student when my first child was born. I was employed when my second child was born. And as soon as my second child was born, I started a company. So, I would have been 25, actually. So in 1985. Started my first company in 1985 in Tokyo. And with one short exception of 2.5 years, I have been running companies, starting companies, investing in companies ever since. So for those of you, who here has young children, say under the age of 5? Come on, put your hands way up. You should be proud of it. Can't see you, come on. So, I just want to say, so starting a new company with young children is absolutely an insane thing to do. And I've done it several times. So I'm probably crazy. Before we talk about me, I'd like to get a little bit of a feeling for the people here. So let's start with, so who here already has a company that they are doing full-time? Put up your hands. That's fantastic. So what about a third, maybe more than a third, eh? Between a third and a half? Great. Who here is seriously going to start a company but has not, or who here has started a company but has not yet jumped in with both feet? A few. Who here wants to start a company but has not yet done so? Okay. So I just want to ask one of the people that already has started a company and sort of jumped in with both feet. Can one of you volunteer to just get up and say a few words about why you got in and started the company? Sorry, we'll have to give you the microphone.
I think it's to make the world a better place.
Say a little bit more about how what you're going to do is going to make the world a better place.
It's more cost-effective, sustainable, reduce paperwork, and save time so you can have more family time.
That's good. Do you have young children at home?
Not that I know of.
Well, if you don't know, they're probably not at home anyway. Good. How about one of the people who is about to start a business? Can one of you volunteer to just say a little bit about why you're looking at starting a business? Come on, let's have a volunteer put up your hand. If you don't put up your hand, great, up here at the front. And say your name too.
I'm Ryan. I'm starting a business because I realized that the business community isn't using a whole bunch of tools that they should be.
Say a few more words.
Basically that they're blind to a bunch of research that's happening at universities that will allow them to make better decisions.
Cool. I want to hear more about that for sure. Okay. Now, of the companies, so everyone here, who here is primarily interested in business-to-consumer business models? Good. Business to business? So a little bit more business to business. Business to machine, or machine to machine. Good. I'm going to come back to you in a second, and you're going to explain what that means for everyone, because not everyone will get that. Who here is creating a two-sided market or a platform company? Great. So I'll pick on another one of you to explain. I've actually got a slide on that, but I'll pick on one of you to explain that as too. Let's start over here. What on earth is a machine-to-machine company?
So it's definitely a growing sector of what matters, but the idea is that it means different things to different people. But for me, it's about when you have algorithms and software that is talking to other software, and that is how your transactions are occurring. So you can imagine that your business might be writing a program, somebody else's business is writing a program, and those two businesses are interacting with each other without any day-to-day human intervention.
Give us a more concrete example. That was abstract I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. So a concrete example is you have companies that are selling vending machines that let their supplier know when they need to be refilled. And you have all kinds of what's called smart contracts that allow the business to get the resources it needs in a completely automated fashion.
Good. What's the advantage of a machine-to-machine business model?
It's extremely scalable. It's very much a winner takes all.
Certainly extremely scalable. I'm not convinced it's winner takes all, but yeah, definitely the most scalable business model, for sure. Someone who's in a two-sided market? Come on, I saw you put up your hand. So if you're in a two-sided market business?
Yes.
Great. Can you explain not everyone here will know what a two-sided market is. So what on earth is a two-sided market?
Two-sided market, I think, is the most troublesome market. The model you have to go for, because you have to satisfy the need for both sides.
What is a two-sided market?
Well, basically, like my platform is that for artists to produce their artwork through my platform, and we satisfy what the skill that they don't have, like to provide like a service that they don't have, like
Okay.
3D printing.
All right. Okay. So so on one side is artists, and on the other side are people that have functions that the artists don't need.
Yep.
You mentioned printing, but it could be a whole sort of thing, a whole list of
It can
things.
be anything.
Okay. Good.
And on the other side is the consumer is like they have no place to buy those artworks.
So you have a three-sided market.
That's a three-sided market.
Yeah. Well, you've got
Yeah,
artists.
I just created one. That's great.
Yeah, you've got artists, right? You've got people that are serving the artists, and you've got consumers. So it's actually a three-sided market.
Yeah, you could,
It's good.
it could be.
We'll talk a little bit more about multi-sided markets. Person at the back there.
So it's a
Sorry,
two-sided
can
market.
everyone say their name? We should start this, the innovation economy is a community economy, and the more that we get to know each other's names and what each other care about, the better we're going to do. So shout out your name too.
John Smith. Is this thing on? So two-sided market. My name is Chris Russell. That was a joke, by the way. Sorry. Two-sided market in that there's a need from. It's a medical device. There's a need from the patient's perspective, and there's cost savings for the healthcare provider, insurance payers perspective. So it's definitely a two-sided market. The challenge is changing the channel of payment from the current status where insurance does not want to pay. They will let patients go on with time, incurring costs, putting to them up front a bill that would prevent those later costs is a real challenge. So it's a two-sided market with different, two-sided in every way, two-sided in terms of the financials, the motivations, etc.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, so just before we go on, I think a really good question in this room is who here is looking for investment? Good. If you're looking for investment, you better get used to putting your hands way up, because there's lots of people. Who here has already raised outside investment? Excellent. So can you tell us a little bit about your company and where you raised the money from? I'm giving you lots of exercise tonight, eh?
I'm Eve Rickard. Our company is Tacit Pleasures. We make computerized sex toys with neural interfaces, and we have an initial seed investment from an angel investor.
Vancouver angel investor?
Actually in Ontario.
Okay, good. That's great. We like to see Ontario money coming. Are you a Vancouver company?
Yes.
Okay, good. We like to see Ontario money coming to Vancouver. Okay, so thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. A little bit about me. So I am a partner at a local consulting firm called Rocket Builders. In this world, Rocket Builders is probably best known for two things. One is we publish the Ready to Rocket list. So Ready to Rocket is a list of the 25 companies there's actually 3 Ready to Rocket lists, but for the one that I think about is the technology, the ICT, Information and Computer Technology list. So that is for companies that are in revenues, so you have to have revenues to be on the Ready to Rocket list, and up to about 25 million in revenues. And it's the top 25 companies in British Columbia that fall in that category that we think are going to take off. So an example of the company that actually went through Ready to Rocket fastest in history, we've been doing this list for 13 years now, was Hootsuite. So we actually have a class of emerging rockets, which are companies, they may be pre-revenue, but they're doing something that we think is interesting and possibly relevant. So Hootsuite was an emerging rocket one year, it was in Ready to Rocket the next year, and it had graduated the year after. That's fantastic. This year, unfortunately, there were no companies that actually graduated from Ready to Rocket. It was a really bad year, and the average revenue growth of Ready to Rocket companies was only 50%, which is low for companies on that list. It's the lowest it has ever been. On the other hand, and this is maybe good news, bad news for you guys, but it's good news for BC, at the bottom of the funnel, in the emerging rockets lists, we put, I think, 30 companies on. We could have easily put 50 companies on. It was incredibly competitive to get onto the emerging rocket list this year, and we actually kicked a bunch of companies off that in normal years you would have let stay on. Believe me, I got lots of angry phone calls. So Rocket Builders is is probably the only sizable consulting company in Western Canada that is really focused on the innovation economy. I'm a founder at TeamFit. I was also the founder of Leverage Point and Recombo. So I'm going to do them in the opposite order. Recombo is a Vancouver company. I found it in 2001, right after the tech wreck. It was actually found, I used a core of engineers that I pulled from another company that I'd been running and used that to find Recombo. Recombo's offices are about 500 meters that way, and it's in the payment management market. I left Recombo in 2005. I found a great CEO for it, fired myself, took a year off. I actually started a company during my year off by accident, but that's a different story. And then I went to Boston. In Boston, I worked for Monitor Group, which is a large strategy consulting firm, now part of Deloitte. I'm not really meant to be a consultant, though. So while I was at Monitor, I found a set of ideas that I liked that I thought could be turned into software. So I bought that out of Monitor and created a B2B SaaS company called Leverage Point that does value-based pricing, primarily, as it turns out, although that was not our intention when we made the company, primarily, as it turns out, in the specialty chemical and industrial machinery markets. And then I came back to Vancouver in 2012. 3 years ago already. Actually, less than that, two and a bit, but 2.5. And I tried just being an investor and a consultant, and it just doesn't do it for me. Because the problem with being a consultant is you talk to people with great ideas who have more energy and are smarter than you, and you don't actually get to do anything. So it was just far more interesting for me to start a new company. I started a company called TeamFit. I'm not going to tell you anything about TeamFit tonight. Happy to talk to you about it offline. But TeamFit is in the talent management space. My co-founder was one of the founders of Saba. Just recently had a $400 million exit. And we are upset because we think it should have been a billion-plus exit, and that's what we're going to do with TeamFit. Yes, and also I invest locally, and right now I'm investing primarily through eFund, because my wife said that you'll write a check to anyone who comes up to you with an interesting idea, so you need discipline, and since you won't listen to me, you have to invest with a number of other angel investors. Who here has heard of eFund? Great. Who here has approached eFund for money? You have, okay. So if you're interested in how eFund works, come up to me at the break. I'm not going to talk about it here, but eFund is actually a pretty active angel investor now in Vancouver. We did, I think, 6 investments last year. So far, we have done 2 investments this year. I think that's right. The most recent one has not been announced, but I'm going to say who it is because it's now formal. So we just today invested in Wearable Therapeutics, a company some of you guys might know as SnugVest, which is actually on the CBC program Dragon's Den tonight. And I don't actually know what happened on that program because they wouldn't tell us. I'm assuming they did not get an investment, but who knows? I may be surprised. I'm easy to find. Best thing to do is to send me an email. I answer almost all emails within 24 hours. And my email address is on the back here, but the best one to use is actually stephen.forth@gmail.com. This is the Ready to Rocket list, but easier to find online. And let's start with inventions. We've all heard the term, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? All of us think that our invention is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Was sliced bread a great invention? Do you know what the problem with sliced bread was? Okay, so got 2 different answers here, and a guy waving his arm at the back.
Dried out fast.
Yeah, dried out. So and so how long did it take from when sliced bread was invented till it actually got market acceptance?
20 years.
That's about right, about 20 years. And I actually think that's pretty standard for all technologies. Most new technologies take about 20 years, or in other words, about a generation to get accepted.
But that doesn't take into account the acceleration of the technologies in general.
Is that true? I don't think that's true. So I'll be happy to debate that with you. I have not seen that acceleration. So I don't actually think that's true, and I've tracked it against a number of different types of technology, and I still think it takes about 20 years for any major innovation to get adopted. Because it's not a function of the dissemination of ideas. That's always actually been reasonably fast since the invention of the printing press. The problem is not with the dissemination of ideas. The problem is getting people's minds to change.
So you're conceding that there was acceleration after the invention of the printing press? But you're saying before that it was slower. But after the printing press, it was
No,
much
before
quicker.
that it took, yeah, that's I would concede that. Although let's remember, when was the printing press invented? Because it was invented in China, so. Anyway, one of the major problems with sliced bread was, it's not just that it dries out though, there's another problem with sliced bread, which is that it's hard to carry around. You know that after sliced bread was invented, they actually tried sticking knitting needles through it to carry it around? So what was missing from sliced bread? What was the other invention that was needed in order for sliced bread to... Yeah, packaging. So sliced bread by itself was not a whole product. You actually needed the packaging to get it. And this is something a lot of us need to remember. There was an angel investor event yesterday. One of the major local angel investor events called Angel Forum. And there was an incredibly cool company there from UBC that's in microbiome. It was the only company that I was still thinking about when I got home at night. The problem that that company, I think, is going to struggle with is that it is going to need a lot of other inventions around it in order to really succeed. And this is actually a critical thing for you to do as entrepreneurs, is to understand not just the power of your own business or your own innovation, but what are all the other things that you're going to need around it. So so sliced bread was invented in 1912, was really effectively brought to market in 1928, and did not really start seeing adoption until 1930. Okay, so that was just a little bit of context. Next is the reason we're here tonight. What is a business model? Anyone want to take a whack at defining a business model? Come on. You're all here, you're all inventing businesses. You must have some idea as to what a business model is. I'm going to pick someone at random then. How about you? Sure, the guy in the white shirt and tie.
Oh, me?
What's a business model?
Well, a business model consists of different categories. So first of all, figuring out your niche market, target consumers if that is applicable, distribution model, investment. So, and then you put it all together in a business plan or a business canvas.
Okay, yeah, I think that's good. So as you say, it has a lot of parts. Has who you're targeting, how you're going to distribute it, how you're going to finance it. A lot of different parts have to get together in a business model. But I think that at the heart of it, there's something simpler. And that a business has to create value. And I'm going to talk quite a bit tonight about what I mean by value. But the essence of a business is that it is able to create value for someone. One of the great marketing guys, Levitt, said that the job of a business is to create a customer. But before you can create a customer, you actually have to create something of value for a customer. But it's not enough just to create value, is it? Because what you really have to do is you have to have some way of capturing that value. If all you do is create value for other people and you can't capture some part of that value for yourself, you don't really have a business model. It's some form of charity. And today, I would argue that it's not enough to create value once and capture it, but you have to have a continuous process of innovation happening. So, not everyone, but for most people today, it's not enough to innovate once or to have one good idea. You have to have a continuous stream. Anyone here ever gone down and pitched a television show in Hollywood? So I did that in the 1990s. I had a television production company once upon a time. When you go down and pitch a show, no matter how good they think the show is, they're going to say, that stinks. What else you got? The reason they do that is not because they want to discourage you. It takes time and effort to build a relationship. If you're actually going to do a show, invest in a show and produce it and get it going, that's a lot of work and a big commitment. So you want to make sure that you're doing that with a person who's going to come up with the next idea and the next idea. You don't want to be betting on a one-trick pony. So I think when you're talking to the smart angel investors in Vancouver, one of the things that they will ask you about and want to look at is how are you going to generate continuous innovation? So it's going to be critical that when you're talking to investors and when you're thinking about your own business, that you think, how am I going to sustain this continuous loop of creating value, capturing value, and reinvesting it? And to me, that's at the heart of what a business model really is. So somewhat different perspective, but I think related, is Steve Blank's approach that a startup is really a search for a business model. You build something, you measure, you learn, you create a set of facts, you build something new, you measure, you learn, and you're really trying to build a system that can execute on this quickly. So there's a Vancouver company that many of you may know called My Best Helper. It's taken them a while to start getting traction. They've only really started to get lift in the last 3 months, I would say. But they have become the masters of constantly doing micro innovations very rapidly. So they are, all the time, they are running at least 4 different versions of their website. And over time, they've managed to get their conversion ratios up from 5% to over 70%. And they've done that not because they're brilliant, but because every day they are testing and doing micro innovations every day. So as you think about the design of your businesses, think about designing a business that can execute on this Steve Blank cycle and do it quickly. Because the fact is that I am sure that what you believe you know about your business and your market is wrong. I believe the same thing about myself. I believe the same thing about Hootsuite. Because even if it was right now, it's going to have changed within 2 months. So what we're trying to build now, when we think about companies, is they're really systems for initially discovering and then continually innovating and developing their business models. So what you're really trying to do is to find this match between a product or offer. Offer might be a better generic word, because product sort of implies something that's packaged up, and you could be selling a service. There's many different things that you could be selling, a revenue model and a market. And that's what you're trying to create. So I just want to hear Steve Blank for a minute, because he's a lot more interesting than I am. Not my computer, so I won't change any settings. Okay, I thought we tested this earlier. Let's see if we can get this working.
I realized that this might actually be a fundamental problem with most startups, is that actually startups were burning money by starting sales and marketing and business and development activities either on the web or physically in the real world way too early. Because if you think about it, Here we are in Silicon Valley. At least those of us physically here, not those watching on TV. But for those of us here in the Valley, we take technical risks with products all the time. Investors put huge bets on all of you to do innovative things. Anybody have any idea what percentage of startups fail because their technology fails? Any idea? How many think it's over 50% of startups fail because the technology didn't work? All right? Over 50%. Over 25%. How many think it's over 25% fail because technology doesn't make it? Turns out less than 10% of startups fail because the engineers were just wrong. Turns out most startups, and I'll leave life sciences aside for a second, most startups in every other field other than life sciences, over 90% fail because they didn't find a market and customers. Full stop. Big idea. Well, if that's the case, and go ask your favorite venture capitalist or next guest, and you're going to have a lot of them in this class and other class. Go ask them. If that's the case, why is it that we have tons of methodologies to measure and help us getting the product right, but no methodologies to help us get the stuff about customers and markets right? Anybody ever been in a company in product management or know what product management people do? There's some people in the back of the room. There's entire tool sets on how to manage technology risk. Tons. But there are almost no tools to manage customer and market risk. Well, think about this. You're an entrepreneur. I have a great idea. Good, let's go build it. Oh, good, let's go raise money. Oh, let's go sell it. You know what the next step is? Oh, we're out of business. Because most of us grow up reading these wonderful stories about all the people who made a ton of money at Google and Facebook and other companies that, these are great examples. Do you ever notice they don't bring in the people who you didn't hear about? Because you wouldn't come. How about bringing in the people who said, I created my last 7 companies. Let me tell you why. You'd go, well, I don't want to be one of those. I want to be Google and Facebook. That's whose presentations I want to hear. Any idea what the ratio is between the Googles and Facebooks and other startups? Now, how many companies fail every year in Silicon Valley? Anybody want to guess? You know what the ratio is? I'm sorry? Over 1,000 to 1. Now, one of the nice things about human nature is every one of you is going to be convinced that you're going to be Google and Facebook. You have to be, right? I mean, that's the passion of an entrepreneur. You have to be convinced, those other 999 companies, they were just idiots. I'm much smarter than them because I have a better idea and we're cool.
Worth looking for Steve Blank's stuff. He's got a lot of really good ideas. But this is a really important point, right? Most of the companies in this room are not going to make it. Anybody here have any idea how many early stage, let's say, technology, innovation economy, startup companies there are in British Columbia, say with revenues of less than 500,000? Anyone want to take a guess? And my answer is going to be a guess too. So let's take some wild guesses here.
9,800.
Pardon?
9,800.
9,800, okay, that's a good number. I haven't been able to find them all, though, if that's the right number. Anyone else want to take a guess? So at Rocket Builders, we think it is roughly about 2,000. Maybe we just haven't looked hard enough, though. But And so I'm on the selection panel for Open Angel. Open Angel is another angel pitch event. And we get about 200 applications a year. At Rocket Builders, we get about 500 applications for Ready to Rocket every year. And we are able to track about another 1,500 companies. We spend money actually looking. So we have a database of, the database today has actually almost 5,000 companies in it. But of course, roughly 3,000 of those no longer exist. Now, some of them no longer exist for great reasons that they were acquired. But most of them no longer exist because people gave up. You know what? That is okay. You know, most of the companies in this room, most of the companies I invest in are not going to make it. What's the average lifespan today of a Fortune 2000 company? It's down to about 18 years. So we were having a huge change and turnover in companies right now. I think it's a fantastic thing. This is the best time in history to build and create companies. This is way better than 1999. Who here lived through the 1999 bubble? Yeah. You know, at the peak of the bubble, I was worth almost $100 million on paper. 2 years later, I was worth only about 10% of that. You know, easy come, easy go. Actually, it was not easy to get it up to 100 million. But anyway, but this is the game that we're playing. So if you're a friend of mine who is probably just about the most successful Japanese businessman in Europe, he called his son Nisei, which means to twice born or to be born again. And he called him that because he knew that in business and in life, you're going to fail. So one of the things we need to be doing in Vancouver is creating a culture where failure is okay. And we support each other, we make sure that each other get jobs, get investment, and succeed together. Let's go on. Oops. Okay, so am I still in? There we go. So let's talk a little bit. So I've said that a business model is really about how you create value and how you capture that value. But you have to be able to express it. So the first really good test of a business model is, can you say it in less than a minute so somebody else can repeat it? That's actually the most important thing. And we may do a little exercise with this. So when I'm at one of these events, and someone asks me what my company does, I take a quick look around to see if there's anyone that I think might be able to explain what my company does. You should always be doing this. You should get your explanation down simple enough that you are comfortable and confident that other people can explain your company for you. It's critical. It's not enough that you can explain your own company. Other people have to be able to explain it. And if you can get that right, then you're on the way towards sort of viral network adoption. So just make it a habit, of getting your friends, your associates, your colleagues, the people that work with you, your investors, they should all be able to explain your company. Next thing you want to be able to do is to draw it. This may sound crazy, but I was taught this technique actually by one of my best VPs of engineering. And what he would do is every month or so, he would take his team, he had about an 8-person engineering team at this company, and he would give them each a piece of paper and say, I want you to draw how our system works. You should try it. Those of you who are running technology companies, try this with your engineers. Get different people, and you should try it yourself too. Draw how the technology works. But most engineers are actually surprisingly good at this. Do the same thing with your business model. Get the different people on your team, get your advisors and your partners and your employees, give them a stack of paper and some crayons and say, I want each of us to go and draw the business model separately. It sounds crazy, but you'd be surprised how much you learn from it. And finally, you have to be able to put your business model into a spreadsheet. And I know there are lots of business consultants around who are happy to do this for you, preferably if they get paid, $5, $10, $15, $20,000. You can't use them. You have to be able to build that spreadsheet yourself. You cannot have another person build it for you. So if you want to run a company and build a company today, you have to learn to use spreadsheets at least well enough that you can build the basics of your business model, and we'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. So another sort of critical message I'd like you guys to take away tonight is most of us, now this room may be the exception, but most of us spend almost all of our time thinking about how we innovate on our technology or our production process or our product. But you can innovate on your business model. And actually, innovations on your business model are probably the most powerful innovations you can come up with. One of the reasons I want you to be able to draw your business model is that if you can draw it, you can start moving the pieces around and thinking about it differently. So business model innovation is really a critical area. And I remember Jeff Hansen, who's actually the managing partner of Rocket Builders, when we first were working on Recombo, said to me, Stephen, you guys are really good at innovating on technology. I wish you would take some of that energy and put it into innovating on the business. I had no clue as to what he was talking about. Because we were building what we thought was killer technology that was going to change the world. And all of our energy and our creativity and our expertise was going into building the technology. Now I realize that he was absolutely correct. That we should have spent a lot of that time and energy and effort thinking about how we could do business differently. So, and I think that obviously the creating value part is one place to do innovation, but we're going to talk a little bit tonight about how to capture value as well. I have a tendency to keep on talking. Can someone keep an eye on the clock and tell me when it's around 8 so we can take a quick break? So actually, can I make that your job? Tell me when it's sort of 5 to 8, so I can find a good cutting point, because I'll just keep rambling on and talking. This is, just about the best time to be doing business model innovation as well, because the combination of the Internet of Things, the cloud, the unbelievable amount of data that is now available to us, and data analytics, all of these things are coming together to allow us to innovate on business models. So this is a real, alphabet soup here, right? There's B2B, and there's B2B2B, and there's B2B2C, and so on. This may look like that I just put all these letters together, but in the Ready to Rocket applications for this year, there were examples of every one of these. So all of these business models are being worked on in Vancouver. And I don't actually think that stringing a bunch of letters together is a good way of describing a business model, but anyway. The other thing is revenue models. Revenue models are changing rapidly. I'm giving a talk in May in Dallas to the Professional Pricing Society on just how much disruption is coming to how we think about pricing. So there are all sorts of new ways of thinking about revenue models and pricing models. This is a critical place for you guys to be thinking about, is how to innovate on your pricing model. And then there's delivery. Who here thinks of Cisco as a hardware company? Okay, some of you do, right? I don't think Cisco is a hardware company. Cisco invests far more money in software engineering than it does in hardware. To me, Cisco is a software company that has chosen to package its software in a box and sell the box. So many of you here are, and I suspect that 99% of the companies here have software somewhere in what they are doing. And it's actually this translation of business processes, of physical processes, virtualization into software that is allowing all of these new business models to be created and all of these new pricing models to be created. But just because you've created software does not mean that you have to sell it as in the cloud as software as a service. And that's part of what business model innovation is about, right? It's saying, how else could I package up this innovation and sell it? You know, Apple's a great example of this as well. Apple is primarily a software and a design company. But it's very good at figuring out new ways of packaging up software and design and finding new ways to sell them. There are a lot of BC examples in this. I don't know how easy that is to read, but you know, there's probably about 70% of the software company, no, more than that actually, probably about 80% of the innovation companies in BC are B2B companies. We skew more towards B2B than, say, Silicon Valley does, and more towards B2B, I think, than Waterloo does, or whatever they call the Golden Triangle, whatever they call that innovation area. There's some great companies here. I'm sure all of you have heard of Hootsuite. Who here has heard of Clio? Yeah, I mean, these Themis, right? These guys are killing it. This company is, you know, Clio may well be the next billion-dollar company in Vancouver. They're just executing unbelievably well. And then there's my favorite. This is actually more B2G maybe than B2B, but anyway, Aquatics Informatics. Anyone know this company? This is an amazing company. They're in the, I think the top 3 floors of the Terracin building. So the guy who runs this company, Ed Quilty, had a PhD in ecology. And he was one of those guys who was out there putting vials in rivers and sending them out to get tested. And he thought, this is crazy. We can't be doing this 10 years from now. So he went back to UBC and got his second PhD, because, you know, one PhD wasn't enough, in big data, and started Aquatics Informatics. Aquatics Informatics is now the globally dominant company in surface water modeling, in the software and sensing, data extraction sensing systems that are used to model surface water. They had a German competitor that was larger than them. The German company was about a $900 million company. And the German company made a strategic exit from the surface water business last year because they said because there were better opportunities in energy, maybe. The fact was that Aquatics Informatics had driven them out of the market. Absolutely fantastic company. B2C, I actually struggled finding B2C companies in Vancouver that I really liked. There was Wandering, reasonably interesting company. Does anyone here shop through Wandering? No, that's too bad. I have friends who have investments in it. B2C is a much harder market to crack than B2B is because it's diffuse. There's a lot of noise. It's just a very hard thing to do. And then we have the two-sided market. So, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit about some of these companies. ePact, I've already mentioned My Best Helper, and then PlaceSpeak. Those of you who are following the transit plebiscite, I almost said a referendum, the transit plebiscite, PlaceSpeak has actually been the best place to go and interact on it. It's a two-sided market for public engagement. But it works really well because it actually is geo-secure. So it knows where you live. It doesn't reveal where you live, but it knows. So you can actually tie comments to places. So are people in Mount Pleasant more likely to support the yes side or the no side in the plebiscite? They actually have a pretty good granular view of what's going to happen in this plebiscite. So, we've got all of these different companies, and every company I have on here is to some degree successful. I found this really interesting. BetaKit is worth following and participating in. This compares, and this data I think is from a 2014 series, but it compares Silicon Valley and Vancouver. So you can see we do pretty well. So let's face it, Silicon Valley is the gold standard for an innovation economy. I think we're stupid, or we're deceiving ourselves when we think Vancouver could or should be like Silicon Valley. We have to grow our own models of innovation. So I wasn't sure that I should put this slide up tonight. But it is useful, right, to compare ourselves to what really is the gold standard. Vancouver does pretty well in talent. There are an incredibly large number, especially on the technology side. Vancouver is talent rich in technology. And we're actually pretty good on mindset. If you look at this, though, we're doing disastrously bad on what may be the most important thing. See if I can get this pointer to work. Yeah, so this one, differentiation. And the reason this matters is that when I say your business model is based on creating value, the fact is that for an early stage company, you can only effectively create value if you are highly differentiated. So if you want to know why Vancouver companies struggle to raise money and to succeed, I think the answer is right there. Yeah. Some people will say the answer is here, that we struggle to get funding, and that's true. It is relatively easy for a good team to raise a seed 1 round in Vancouver of up to, say, $300,000. It is difficult, but not impossible, to raise a seed 2 round of $700,000. So my company, TeamFit, has raised about $700,000 and change in seed money from angel investors, including ourselves. We're raising another $600,000. So, and I know a company in Rossland. Where's Nancy Green from? Rossland, right? It's a company in Rossland, BC, that's raised almost $5 million in angel money. So, Rossland. That's serious money in Rossland. Now, granted, the money came from Vancouver, not Rossland, but anyway. So, it is possible to raise these first few rounds of money in Vancouver. Where we fall apart is in your A round, especially early A rounds do not exist in Vancouver today. There's no really credible venture capitalist, in my opinion. You can ask Mike Volker what he thinks next week. Maybe I'll come in so I can hear what he says. But I think that there is a huge early A round gap in British Columbia today. It's not just in BC, though. This is actually everywhere, including Silicon Valley. But in Silicon Valley, there's enough depth, so even though it's bad, it's not nothing. In Vancouver, it's almost nothing. So startup output, we need to do more work here. Support, where we still haven't brought the entire infrastructure together that we need to support startups. I was surprised by this, actually. I thought we were doing much better on support. I think this, some of this could be partially a sampling error, but this is based on several hundred companies, so, it's more likely that I'm wrong than that this is wrong. So I thought that was interesting, though, especially though because it's this differentiation thing that's critical. I pray that I do not have to look at another pitch for a company that is going to be selling food shopping services. I have seen lots of those pitches, but I am also equally sure that somebody, and maybe it's the guys I saw yesterday, somebody is going to figure out some real differentiation there. So even in a crowded market, if you have real differentiation, you can win. Who thought that we needed another search engine when Google was launched? We had lots of search engines. The last thing we needed was another one. Turned out that what we needed was one that worked.
You're at 5-2, Stephen.
So why do you think we are failing in differentiation?
That's a fantastic question. Did you get that? So I'll repeat it. So why are we failing in differentiation? I wish I knew the answer. I'd not asked myself that question, and now I'm going to be up all night. I'm going to write a blog post about it. I think we have an answer. So we have some answers back here, though.
I heard an interesting idea about that exact question. Sorry, thank you. Just earlier, and it was part of the Canadian ego is that we're a bit insecure, and so we don't try and differentiate. We don't try and point out how we're different and better. We actually try to move towards the norm and show comparables. So,
So it's because we're Canadian?
it's a part of, sorry.
That's an interesting answer.
But
It's an interesting answer. I'm not
That's
sure
what I
that-
heard.
It's an interesting answer. I'm not sure that I agree, but that's going to now go into my thinking process for tonight as well. I'll write a blog post on this for New Ventures BC, okay. And I'm going to ask more people. There was another comment, though, I think, over there.
My name is Dr. Albert, and the reason I think is, even I graduated from UBC Business School, they never teach creativity. There's no such thing as generating new ideas, and how do you develop new products? How do you have new market?
So there's a design thinking program at UBC, right? That's not getting much traction or adoption?
I can't hear you. There's a design
thinking. So there is.
I don't know about this.
Yeah. Okay. So the fact that you don't know about it says a lot. One more comment over here.
You know what I think?
Again, I'm sorry, guys. Let's all say our names again so we can start knowing who each other are.
You look at Silicon Valley, Bangalore, and Hsinchu. There's a mass of techies who end up reinvesting, and they have good skills and experience raising companies.
I agree that's true. I don't think that explains the differentiation question very well, though.
Well, I mean, that's where the support comes from, right?
I agree. That's where the support now. That's one of the reasons that we're weak on support. The ecosystem in Silicon Valley, for all of its weirdness, works on many levels. And we have a lot of work to do to get that working here. Sorry, could you just shout out your name so that everyone gets to hear your name?
Gerard.
Gerard. Thank you, Gerard. I'll muse on that, and I'll write a blog post. I'm going to ask lots of people that question now. Almost 8? Okay. Let's just quickly see if we can get through two-sided markets. So a number of people here are doing two-sided markets. Two-sided markets are the best business model if you can get them to work. That is a really big if. But first thought on two-sided markets, if you have a conventional business model and you are competing against someone who has managed to innovate a two-sided market in your area of business, you have already lost. There is no way for a conventional business model to defeat a two-sided market business model. So that's great, right? So let's all run out there and build two-sided markets. The problem with two-sided markets, though, is they, as you know, right, they are really freaking hard to get started because you need both sides of the market. And very few, my best helper is starting to get traction. Vancouver has not historically had great success with two-sided market models. Wandering is also in many ways a two-sided market. So what we're now seeing increasingly, and I resisted this for TeamFit is also a two-sided market company, by the way. And I resisted this, but I'm slowly getting it beaten into me by the market itself, is that if you want to build a two-sided market company, and you want to do that with less than, say, $100 million, you are best off you need to do two things. One is you have to make sure that each side of the market gets value regardless of what the other side is doing. This is hard, right? Because that's not actually in the nature of a two-sided market. But that's actually an important design principle for two-sided markets for people that are trying to either bootstrap them or bootstrap or do them on the kinds of capital that are available in Vancouver. Another thing that I'm seeing a lot of the companies, not just in Vancouver, but also in Boston and in Austin, Texas, do, is even though they have a two-sided business market model, they go really hard after one side of the market first. And they are able to actually create value for one side of the market before, and that will drag the other side of the market in. So I'm going to use EPACT as an example of that. So EPACT is a local company. I think they're a Grow Lab company. Actually, I know they're a Grow Lab company. Grow Lab is now called Highline. It's bought by some people in Toronto. I think that's a bad thing. This is being publicly broadcast, isn't it? I'm going to get myself in a lot of trouble. Anyway, so EPACT, great team. They won Best Technology Company at the Canadian Financing Forum this year. There's actually a post about them on the teamfit.co blog. And their market is parents mostly, but anyone who has a obligation of care for another person is one side of their market, and then the other side of their market is organizations, people like the Red Cross, YMCA, and also companies. And their long-term strategy is to get people's emergency contact forms onto EPACT, so you don't have to have 30 of these things floating around, and so that first responders can rapidly find a person's emergency contact form. I don't know if I explained that very well, but if I did, my apologies, EPACT. So they went out and tried to build this on both sides of the market at first, and what they've discovered is that it's too much work and it costs too much money to try to do both, so now they are completely focused just on the organizations. So they'll go into an organization and they'll say, you have this ugly paper process for emergency contact forms. We're going to take it, we're going to make it a beautiful, elegant business process. It's all automated. You can access the forms anywhere on your mobile device, and it's going to save lives. And then as they start signing people up, they have a bit of an identity matching problem. Most of you who are in two-sided markets are going to here's a problem someone really needs to solve. Identity matching that gives control over the people who own the identities is a big problem today in all sorts of software and commerce. So if there's some really smart people in the room and your current idea does not make it, please solve the identity matching problem. So two-sided market strategies are really difficult to execute on. Having said that, of course, there's always the exception. And My Best Helper is finally starting to pick up traction and really get going on a two-sided market strategy on a very small amount of money. I'm not 100% sure how much money is in My Best Helper, but I am pretty sure it's less than $1 million. So they've shown that it can be done. And they've done it through this sort of constant iteration and improvement process on both sides of their market. So I'm not saying don't do it. If you can do it, it's fantastic. And there's one hugely successful company right in Vancouver that did it and bootstrapped, Plenty of Fish. As a business, that's a great company. Over $100 million in revenues. That's I'm pretty sure everyone in this room would be happy to have a business with $100 million in revenues. So it can be done. It has been done. If you're going to get investors to finance you, you're going to struggle to get investors in Vancouver to write those checks. Maybe we're stupid, but that's the case. I'm going to pause there for a break. So just before we get started, where's Sean? Sean, can you get up and make your comment on why you think there's a lack of differentiation?
Hey guys, my name's Sean, and I was going to say, I think the lack of differentiation in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland is probably due to a culture that people fail, or people are afraid of failure, so they don't really think ambitiously and they don't have wild ideas, and people think within the box, and because of that the fear of failure, they don't accomplish anything of that nature.
I think that's an interesting perspective. So I will write a blog post about this. And Sean, shoot me an email so I can give you credit. And anyone, I'm happy to have a conversation about this. I'll find a place where we can have a conversation online. Okay, so let's go on. There was a great book written by a guy called Chris Anderson a couple of years ago called Free. I think it was called Free, the Future of a Radical Price. And it got a lot of people talking about free business models. And most of you are probably going to have some dimension of free to your business model. The problem with this is a lot of people get confused about it because there are actually several different business models that you could call free. So one of them, which most people who are selling some form of software today have, is there is some form of free trial. And you either have a free trial and you're trying to get them to convert, or you have a free version and you're trying to get them to convert to a paying premium version. And the design of these systems has become a real art form. So that's one form of free trial. A related one is the whole notion of community, where the more people there are in the community, the more valuable the community is to its members. So there are network effects taking place. So and then you're usually selling then, you're trying to convert people into some form of enhanced membership. LinkedIn Premium being an example. So what's the difference between these two? In free trial, my goal is if you're not going to adopt, I want to get rid of you at some point. In a community, if you're not going to convert, I want to get rid of you at some point. In a community, I want to keep you because your presence and your interactions are creating more value for the community. So some people get confused about the difference between these two, and it's really important that you understand very crisply whether you are trying to get people to convert, and if they don't convert, you want to demote them and put them on some form of drip feed campaign, or whether you are really creating a community where every individual creates more value for the whole community, and you don't want to lose them no matter what, even if they're never going to pay you any money. And then the final, the third model for free is when you have a two-sided market and you only decide to monetize one side of the market. The classic example of a two-sided market is credit cards, where you have consumers and merchants. The credit card companies monetize both sides of their market, as you may have noticed. Another classic two-sided market, though, is Google. Google is a search engine, so there's all of us, and I'm sure I suspect everyone in this room searched on Google today, unless there's a few Bing fanatics still left. They don't charge us for search. They monetize the other side of their market, the advertisers. So the other kind of free business model is when you have a two-sided market and you've decided that you're only going to monetize one side of the market. There is actually, though, a fourth kind of business model for free, if you can call it business model, which I run into quite often. And that's people who have no clue as to how they're going to make money. That one's really bad. So you don't want that one. So free is going to be part of your business model, but you need to be able to articulate why you are doing that. Why are you giving something away for free? There are very good reasons to do so, but if you can't explain why you're doing it, then you've got a problem. So we did this. Just want to get quickly back. I'm sure all of you know the business model canvas. It's become sort of pretty standard stuff now. There's also now this value generation canvas. This is a great little tool because this gets into value. And remember, the first part of your business model is how you create value. And basically, there's just two ways of creating value. You create a gain or you remove a pain. Many young companies that come to me say, well, we do both. And I say, well, that's too bad, because you can really only communicate one. So as you design your business model here, you're going to have to think very carefully about whether you want to focus on gain creation or pain relievers. And this is a critical part of your business design.
Question about that. What would you call a movie producer?
So a movie producer, it's an interesting question. So
that's to entertain. It's not taking away a pain or
no, I would
gain.
disagree. I actually, so you're just thinking in terms of economic terms. But gains and pain relievers can be emotional every bit as much as they can be economic. And we'll actually talk about that in a moment. I don't go into in deep detail in this talk, but it's pretty clear that even in B2B, emotional value drivers are critical for successful sales. So yeah, that's another critical thing to think about. When we say value, it's not just economic value, there's also emotional values. And we'll actually get to that, but rather superficially.
Incentives, rewards, punishment. What motivates people? How sensitive they are to
Do you want to repeat that?
Rewards, punishments, what motivates people?
So the psychology of value is incredibly interesting, and there are some insights that you can get from that. Again, that's maybe for the next the 102 talk. Yeah, so that can be a useful framework in helping to think through this. I'm not going to go into that right now, though. So the business model canvas. Whether you like it or not, you're going to have to use the business model canvas today. Not today, but in this project. It's become an expected part of your toolkit. So if you have not read the business model generation book, you might as well just, go out and get it, or get it online. And I know Alex Osterwalder did not pay me to say that. I actually do not like the new book, The Value Model Generation, although this in fact does come from the new book. The business model generation book is actually a reasonably good book. Everyone can benefit from reading it. This is how the value proposition and the business model canvas fit together. I'm going to encourage everyone, just to make everybody's life simpler, to use these two canvases as they design and think about their business models. It's not to say that there aren't other ways of thinking about it. I'm starting to think that the business model canvas is actually one of the reasons that we're seeing so little differentiation these days. Because it's sort of become cookie cutter for a lot of people, and there's a lot of consultants and accelerators and incubators. If you go up to Launch Academy, they actually have this painted right on the desks along the side of the walls. Not this, I'm sorry, the business model canvas. So for those of you who are really interested and have time, go out and try and find some other models of how you can draw and think about your business model. Let's get to the spreadsheet. So, as I was saying earlier, the spreadsheet is absolutely foundational to your business model. If you cannot express your business model in a spreadsheet, you don't have one. Or you don't have one clearly articulated enough to convince anyone to make an investment. And these days, the business models actually have to be very, very bottom up. So when I look at a business model spreadsheet, I expect to see a funnel in it, and I expect to see the conversion assumptions for the funnel. However you generate your funnel, I don't care, there's lots of different ways of generating a funnel. You have to have a tab that shows how you're going to generate demand, no matter what kind of business it is, and you have to call out your assumptions. If you're actually in business, what I really want to see is I want to see then the actuals. And if there's a difference between your assumption and your actual, you have to be able to explain to me why there's, and it's not bad that there's a difference, but you have to be able to explain why there's a difference and what you're doing to change it. Because the fact is that the actuals are almost always worse than the assumption. Because if it was better, someone would have already raised the assumption. And from this, you can actually go all the way to build your profit and loss model. This is not hard stuff. Building one that's believable and you can actually execute on is hard, but the mechanics of building this spreadsheet are easy. Most grade 9 students could do it with you. So I don't want to hear any excuses from anyone, oh, I don't like using Excel, or oh, I'm no good at math. This is not hard. The math part of this is easy. It's the thinking part that's hard. So, as you use this spreadsheet, it's critical, of course, to call out your assumptions. Some people like all their assumptions on an assumption page. I don't. I actually like the assumptions right beside the numbers they're driving, so I can see what's happening. You have to be tracking them. Business is getting incredibly metrics driven. So one of the questions that I always ask companies when they come to me either for consulting or because they want money is, what metric are you driving today? And most companies can answer that. Actually, some companies can't. So then they go away until they can. And you should, not only you, everyone in your company should know what that metric is every day. But the more important question is okay, after you finish with that metric, what's the next metric you're going to optimize? Many companies can't answer that question, but that's actually the more important question. Your investors are going to expect you to have this spreadsheet, but you should also go through it with your team so that they all understand what it is and how it works. Now, why do you think investors want a 3-year or a 5-year profit and loss projection? Got an answer here? Sorry, there's people watching online, so.
I'm Ryan again. So the investor can begin to understand how quickly they're going to recoup their investment.
Okay. Any other answers? A couple back here.
I think on one hand, it's an expression that what you're working on could possibly work. It's a sanity check. On the other hand, I think it's a shibboleth. And because they know that that same shibboleth is going to be expected at later stages, they want you to be able to do it now.
Okay. There's one more answer.
It lets you compare the metrics for other companies.
Okay. So, all right, one last one.
Yeah, I'm Mohammed. They want to know if you thought about it or not.
I think that's actually the answer. Well, we know that it is wrong. We are 100% sure that your 3-year projections are wrong. If you could predict what an early stage company was going to be doing 3 years in the future, you have a lot more money than I do. And you're a lot smarter than I am. So we know it's going to be wrong. We do not expect it to be right. And because we don't expect it to be right, we don't use it. I think it's useless in doing evaluation. Any investor who does a valuation of an early stage company based on 3-year pro formas, it has been consuming too much of the local product. But if you can't do it, if you have to be able to show two things, right? That you can actually think through what the business is and how it functions as a business, and that you have metrics and numbers that you can use to course correct and to change. So it is absolutely essential, even though it is guaranteed to be wrong. I'm not going to go through this. I think we're sharing the deck so people can look at this. One of my projects is to try to get 20 or 30 companies to share their business models so we can put them up online. I'm not having any success so far. I'm going to put Team Fits up online as soon as I find 4 other companies that will put theirs up with me. Because I'm a coward, right? I don't want to do it by myself. Back to Steve Blank. So Steve Blank actually has a really interesting thing that he does called the investment readiness level. And this comes actually out of sort of munging together some NASA stuff about whether a technology was ready to actually go into a real rocket and the business model canvas. I would suggest that you sit down with your team and your advisors and you say where you think you are on this investment readiness level, which starts from, you've done a complete first pass through the, oops, sorry, no point in pointing at that screen, is there? You've done a complete first pass through the canvas, all the way up to that you've actually validated all your metrics. Validated all your metrics means that you're in the market and you can actually see what your conversion ratios are, what your price realization is, all of that stuff. Who here thinks that they have a company that is already at level 9? No, good, because you wouldn't be in this room if you were. Who here has the prototype of a low fidelity minimum viable product? Good, so I'm going to ask you, can you just quickly describe what your MVP is?
Hi, I'm Judy. What our product is?
Yeah, the minimum viable product.
Minimum viable product. We have a product called Near to It, which is an online software as a service content management system for event curators to create, manage, and measure content for mobile phones. On the those are our customers. On the other side, we have a free mobile app for visitors to the events that is triggered by iBeacons as they move through to automatically display the content that the event curators have created.
Very cool. And you've got a low fidelity MVP ready that you could show us.
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm not sure if everyone knows that, but Vancouver is emerging as one of the top places for event management software. There's some very, very exciting companies here, and that's a good thing for you because success tends to come in clusters. So you are more likely to be successful if you can find at least 5 or 6 other companies at different stages that are doing something that is serving the same markets, is serving the same customer segments, is using related technologies. If you're the only company of your type in Vancouver, it's not impossible to succeed, and everything has to start somewhere, but those clusters are critical, so it's great, and I would like to see that cluster grow. I actually think that, what's Jeff's company called? Used to be called Zoma, EventBase? Yeah, EventBase. I actually think EventBase could be one of the next breakout companies in Vancouver. They're so good that South by Southwest created an investment arm in order to invest in them. That's pretty cool. Corporates are your best investors. Everybody here, I would hope, knows Jeffrey Moore's technology adoption cycle. This is a critical framework to think through. The critical thing to understand about this is that innovators, early adopters, bowling alley, tornado, late majority, and laggards all buy for different reasons. And they respond very differently to selling messages. The reason that there's a chasm here among the early adopters is, well, so let's just say, I'm going to give you quick definitions of how I think about these things. An innovator uses a new product or technology because it's cool and because they're cool. All it requires. It doesn't have to do anything useful. It can be hard to use. It can be difficult as long as it's cool in some way, whatever their definition of cool is. Early adopters are fundamentally different. They buy because it will give them a differentiated advantage against their competition. So an early adopter will buy because nobody else has bought. And they tend to listen carefully to innovators, but they are not innovators. They have totally different behaviors. Innovators buy because it's cool, and they don't care if it's painful. Early adopters buy because it's going to give them a differentiated advantage against their competition. Most of us, one of our jobs is to go out and figure out who the early adopters are. And almost every industry has, 5, 20. There's usually not a lot of them. The problem with early adopters, though, is they're known to be early adopters, and the other people in the industry think that they're nuts. Say, oh yeah, Joe at, I'll pick on TELUS, Joe at TELUS bought it. But we all know Joe, right? He'll try anything. Just because Joe tried it doesn't mean I'm going to try it. Most people who buy B2B solutions, but actually most consumers as well, buy because somebody else that they know bought. This is the fundamental difference, right? These early adopters buy because nobody's bought, but most people buy because somebody else has bought. And that's why there's a chasm, and you have to cross it. The bowling alley, you'll hear this a lot in different ways. You may hear it as your market entry segment, lots of different ways of describing it. This is the small segment that you are going to target to enter your market. You may have heard that investors are looking for billion-dollar markets. Well, yes, but we're looking for billion or multi-billion-dollar markets, but we're looking for small market entry segments. How small? I would argue that you were looking for a market entry segment that within 3 buying cycles, whatever the buying cycle is in your industry, and if it's airplanes, it might be 20 years, and if it's a mobile app, it might be a week. But within 3 buying cycles, you can credibly get more than 50% of the market. So that's how small I want the segment to be. That your company can credibly get 50% or more in 3 buying cycles. So you have to think very hard about it. Choosing your market entry segment is probably the most difficult thing that you will do. And like everything else, the first one you choose is probably going to be wrong. So you have to be able to measure quickly whether your target entry segment is right and move on quickly. Tornado, so bowling alley is people are buying because other people who look exactly like them are buying it. A tornado is when everybody's buying it. What's a company in Vancouver that looks like it's in a tornado right now? Slack. Yeah, Slack for sure. Another one? Yeah. I don't think so. I think eVigilon's still in bowling alley markets. I don't think that they're in a tornado at all. I don't know that they ever will be in a tornado. But Hootsuite is, or it's pretty darn close. When you think about Slack, it's amazing though, right? It got into tornado almost in less, or about a year, maybe a year and a half. Slack is on the Ready to Rocket list. It was put on the Ready Rocket list over my objections because I don't actually consider it to be a Vancouver company, but there you go. Another sort of critical thing that you need to be able to understand is the difference between a sustaining and a disruptive innovation. This comes from a guy called Clayton Christensen. I know there's some controversy about this over the last few months, but it's a critical conceptual framework that anyone who wants to work in the innovation economy needs to understand because it's central to how you think about your business model. And the simple way of thinking about this, first of all, I encourage you to read both of these books, Crossing the Chasm and The Innovator's Solution. I know that some people think they're old hat now, but I don't. So the critical thing about a disruptive solution is it provides a new form of value to a market that did not previously consume. So we're going to get into value drivers in a couple of minutes. The critical thing about a disruptive innovation is you're creating a new value driver that did not exist before, and you are targeting it towards a part of the market that has not consumed because it was not properly served. Most of us are actually going to create sustaining innovations, not disruptive innovations. That's just the truth. And the important thing to realize about a sustaining innovation is that it is almost impossible to win and build a large company on a sustaining innovation. Because the incumbents, the people that are already there before you, are going to hopefully they're going to buy you. That's the best outcome. Or they are going to drop their prices and put you out of business until they can catch up on the sustaining innovation. And there's no set of patents or intellectual property protection that is going to work. So remember this. This is actually one of the reasons that so many companies don't succeed, is that most innovations are sustaining innovations, and the best outcome that you can have as a sustaining innovation is that one of the large companies buys you. And most of us like to fool ourselves, right? We all like to think that we're doing a disruptive innovation. I think TeamFit's disruptive. I'm probably wrong. Slack thinks Slack is disruptive. We'll see. They may be right. They're kind of showing that they're right at this point, but we'll see. 8:45. Okay. So it doesn't matter if, last year I had an hour and I didn't get through all my slides, and this year I have 2 hours. Not going to get through all my slides either. This is, I think, is actually a pretty critical slide for the people in this room. Most companies, most innovators start with a product. Then they figure out how much that product is going to cost. Based on that cost, they come up with a price. Hopefully, they find some customers. And maybe the customers get some value, but they usually don't know. This is a really bad way to do innovation. It's the way most of us do it. It's the way I have done it most of the time in the past. A much more powerful way is you really have to understand your customers. And you have to understand your customer segments, because they're different. So whether you do this through buyer personas or any of the 20 different tools that are out there to do it, it's absolutely central. This is where you need to start, is by understanding customers. Then, how do you create value for those customers? Build a product that actually creates the value. Base your price on the value that you create, and then engineer your costs so that you can be profitable at that price. So this is, and I'm going to submit that the companies that take this bottom approach of customer value, product, price, cost are far more likely to be successful. They're still likely to have sustaining innovations, and they'll probably get bought, not become the next billion-dollar company. But the people who create them are likely to have really good outcomes. So I've used the word value a lot. So I'm going to finish off tonight by talking a little bit about value. So first of all, value is in a customer-specific term. It has absolutely nothing to do with the cost that for you to create it, or the cost of your inputs, or how cool you may think you are. Value is a customer-centric term, and it's always relative to an alternative. So I am sure that when you're talking to people, they will ask you, who's your competitor? And somebody will always say, oh, we don't have any competition. To which my thought was, oh, so the world is going to be created anew with your product. Because there's always an alternative, right? We managed to survive without your product to date. The alternative may be to do what they're doing today. That's actually usually the most important alternative. It may be to do nothing. Frequently, it's an alternative. Or it may be some more conventional form of competition, but you have to be able to answer this question: what is the alternative? And then value has both economic and emotional dimensions. In B2B, you're going to have to answer both. So if all of your value propositions are in terms of the economic, you are probably not going to have a successful B2B product. I know that's hard to believe, but I think there's a lot of evidence now that that's the case. If you're creating a consumer product, the primary value drivers are going to be emotional. In some cases, there may be an economic dimension to it as well, and you need to think through that. but the emotional is probably going to outweigh the economic. This has become the standard way of thinking about economic value. So I'm just going to go through this really quickly because there are lots of good resources online for it. This is referred to economic value as economic value estimation. It was developed by a guy called Tom Nagel. No, not the philosopher. The economist / marketing guy who now lives in Florida and still boxes even though he's in his late 60s. It starts with you have to understand what the next best competitive alternative is, whether it's doing nothing, whether it's doing what they do today, whether it's one of your competitors. Then there's 4 ways that you can actually create economic value. You can lower capital investment, you can lower working capital, you can lower operating costs, or you can help increase revenue. Now, obviously, there's lots of different ways you could do any of those things. But in order to be honest, you have to admit that compared to the alternative, there's stuff that you don't do as well as the alternative. I've seen probably 5,000 of these EVE models at this point in my life. And I would say half of them had no negative value drivers. And usually that just means that the people either they don't understand their customer, they don't understand their competitor, they're not being honest, or they're lazy. One of those 4 things. There are always negative value drivers. Shortcomings are the most common, but there's often unique costs to using your solution. Maybe it requires retraining. That's a cost. So when you build these things, you have to be really, really honest with yourself and look really hard at what the alternatives are and what your competitors can do. This gives us some more details. When you get this deck, you can go in and see some more fine-grained analysis of how these different value drivers work. I've found that the most important way to think about emotional value, though, is in terms of Maslow. For those of you who have degrees in psychology and psychometrics, I know that this has been disproven 7 different ways. It's still a very useful framework to think with, in my experience. So, Maslow's hierarchy of human needs goes from physiological to safety to love or belonging to esteem to self-actualization. Which products, so when you're designing your value propositions, your emotional value propositions, which of these do you think is going to allow you to drive the higher price? Okay, so further down, because we have to have that stuff, right? If I'm starving, I don't care about any of that other stuff. People are paranoid about security right now. Security companies are getting good investments and great valuations. So that's a logical argument. Anyone want to pose a counter argument?
If you're starving, you don't have money, so you're not a good customer. So the people at the top, while they don't starve and they don't have to get those things at the bottom, they have the means to get to the bottom, so they represent the target audience that you really want to target.
That's an interesting perspective. I'm going to argue that so I actually think that that's correct. You realize much higher prices if you sell at the top of the hierarchy of human needs. So products that are being sold for self-actualization command far higher prices and are much more profitable than ones sold further down the hierarchy. Let's think of a local example. Lululemon. Lululemon, gets a far higher price point than physically identical products. And they do it because they have convinced you, or convinced people. I normally wear Lululemon cycling pants because they're actually the best ones. Or they've convinced me they're the best ones anyway. So if you can sell into self-actualization, that is a very, very powerful way to position your product. In the tech world, who's really good at selling self-actualization? Apple, right? Apple, remember all, the Think Different ads. Apple is hugely successful at selling self-actualization. Here's how I go about selling self-actualization in B2B, because I work mostly in B2B. So before I call on a customer, because I still do some actual physical calls. Nobody cold calls anymore, but I still do warm calls. I almost always read the CEO's and the board's statements. So I know what that CEO has said about his company and what he's trying to achieve or she's trying to achieve with that company this year. Or if I'm selling lower down into the hierarchy, bad idea, by the way, always try and sell at the top and get pushed down. I find out what the person's KPIs are, key performance indicators. And if what I'm selling does not impact that person's key performance indicators, I'm not talking to the right person. So I'm going to stop here tonight. There are quite a few more slides in this deck, and I'm happy to talk to people about pricing and pricing strategies. But the message I want to leave you with is that it's critical to innovate on your business model. And innovating on your business model means finding new ways of creating value for customers that are different from what other people in the market are doing. And that's what business models are. That's what business model innovation is. And the company that wins the New Ventures BC is probably going to be a company that is showing some form of business model innovation. Okay, got time for some questions, I think? Questions, comments, brickbats?
Hey, I'm Vince. For this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what about a tiered system that would hit more than one, I guess, marginal difference in terms of, I don't know, potential spending as well as needs?
So, good question. So the question is, when you're designing your value propositions, can you hit more than one? The answer is obviously yes. Problem with that, though, is one of the most difficult, once you've figured out your value propositions, your market segmentation, your differentiated value, and all of that stuff, you still have to communicate a message to a market, and it's really hard to communicate multiple messages. It's really hard to design multiple marketing systems. So, can you do it? Yes. If you're selling a high-touch professional service, you have to be naturally good at doing that. But if you're building a scalable product and you're an early-stage company, don't. Figure out the one message that is going to work, and test it and change it as you need to. One more? No more questions. I guess I did a terrible job tonight. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm easy to find for those of you who want questions. This deck will be put up, right, for everyone?
Yeah.
And if you can't find me, you're not trying. Okay, thank you very much.
Let's all give a big
everyone.
round.